Good morning, everybody. Nice to be with you once again. We have just seen Jim Buchanan of Canada trying to qualify and in the long jump in his first attempt trying to hit the distance of 7.80 meters. And Bill Gardner, he comes up with 5.61. That really doesn't mean anything because he didn't really make the jump, did he?
No, it means nothing, and I think it might be chalked up to the fact that through, again, an excess of desire, he got a terrific speed going on the runway, could not handle the impact on takeoff. He buckled in the knees and had to run through the pit. This is unfortunate because his best jump of the year, 7.91, which is 25 feet, 11 1/4 inches, of course, would put him into the qualifying round in this competition. It's a heartening thing to see, again, 3 big jumpers from Canada in these finals, and it's going to be even more heartening if they make the qualifying rounds.
Okay. What do you want, Tom?
Bill, it's very difficult to try and figure out exactly what happened to Jim on his jump. As we said before, maybe he just didn't reach the board, but he gave up on it. There's no doubt about it. He knew he didn't have it.
Well, I think the problem here was that the speed he had developed on the runway, he could not sustain in the takeoff. There must be an impact of 500 or 600 pounds on takeoff in the long jump, and if you can't control that, you're going to lose the jump.
I think we've just had our first qualifier as they're using 2 groups and the double pit and the double runway on the far side of the stadium. Nobody of the 9 that we have had so far this morning has been able to make it to the qualifying distance of 7.80, but perhaps Jacques Rousseau of France has come up with that. He is the 5th jumper out of group number 1. Now we have a look at Jim Buchanan again. See, it looked as if he was going to take off, and then he just flew it out at the end there.
That's right. Well, he, of course, don't forget that long jumping, one of the prerequisites of long jumping is hitting that board, unfortunately, so it's really the board hitting long jump these days. Now, he's got good speed in the runway, good high developed knee action, high heels. However, coming into the board, as he starts to lean back, trying to slow that lower body down and speed the upper body up, he does not have sufficient lift to continue his jump and gives up midway.
So he dropped down on his right foot. It was recorded. It was a good jump. So it goes in the record book at 5.61. This is Richard Rock, number 168 from Canada. Richard has he kind of goes hot and cold every once in a while, but he certainly performed well in the trials down in Quebec City, Bill.
He certainly did. In fact, he was one of our pleasant surprises again. Richard Rock is a hot jumper indeed, and it's going to be very rewarding to see him make this qualifying round. He is coached by Walter Kostrick of Toronto. He's progressed over 3 feet in the last 3 years, which is an astounding development.
Now, as you watch Richard come into the pit here off the board, look for that Olympic logo that sits alongside the pit. That is the distance that they must reach. The record is on the side to the right. That is the Olympic rings. That's the Olympic record, the world record, of course, set in 1968 by Bob Beamon, 29 feet, 2.5 inches.
Only 19 years old, Tom. He's 6'1", 148 pounds, from Toronto.
Waiting for the right moment. The distance, 7.80 meters, 25 feet, 7 inches. To qualify for the final, we have some 33 trying to make the final. Of those, only a dozen will make it through.
He won the first Olympic trials this year with a jump of 7.88 meters, which is beyond this qualifying standard. And he knows that everything is on the line here. He's got to come up with that best with no wind assistance whatsoever.
He's getting ready. Richard Rock, Canada. Jim Buchanan has already jumped once. He failed to qualify. Here goes Rock. He's up. No, I don't think he's made it, but it looks as if he will on his second or third. There was enough promise there.
I think there was enough promise. This man's got tremendous potential. Let's have a look at what happened to the jump. This jump's the approach phase has got to be very fast. Speed is very important in the long jump, more important than height, in fact. The long jumper's problem is the compromise, however. How much of that speed should he convert into upward vertical height? We see him lean back. He's controlling with a hitch kick, arms back on the jump. If he would throw those arms back a bit farther before landing, he might get another 5 or 6 inches extension.
Well, he got 7.44, which isn't very bad at all for Richard Rock on his first attempt. The qualifying distance, 7.80. So he comes up short, but as we said, he shows a lot of promise. Next up, we'll have Larry Myrick's from the United States. The best jump that we have had so far in this qualifying round, nobody has qualified as yet, was Petroversov of the Soviet Union at 7.78. That's it, live from the stadium to this point. Now let's go back to Lloyd.
Okay, Tom, just seeing the long jump beginning to...
I think that without wind, there's no excuses anyway.
Let's go to the long jump as we put on our other hat. The competition continues. We have yet to have more than one qualifier in the long jump, making the distance of 7.80 meters.
Jim McAndrew is another one of our good ones, Tom. Good speed in the runway.
Short.
Looks like he was short, and that's too bad. Let's hope that's just a warm-up phenomenon and that he can pull it together for the next two jumps. Let's see what happens here. He's got to get that good speed, and he knows it.
That's Baumgartner, Hans Baumgartner of Germany, Bill, who looks a great deal, as a matter of fact, like Jim McAndrew of Canada. Let's see what his distance was. Have they recorded it? Yes, they have. It's 7.81 meters. So that will qualify him. He'll be the second qualifier. The only other to do it is Francis Jacques Rousseau, the fifth jumper that we had in Group 1. More action at canoeing at the basin, so let's go there live.
And right now, we have the sea.
Right now, we're going back out to the track and field action, specifically the field this time, where the men's long jump qualifying round is underway. Here's Tom McKee.
And on the runway, getting ready to go, is the third Canadian who is trying to qualify here, Jim McAndrew.
Jim McAndrew, 20 years old, from Toronto, 5'9½", 155 pounds. He was unranked in 1975, but was U.S. Junior Indoor Champion.
Watch for that Olympic logo. That's what they have to hit in the distance. He's out there and pretty close. I don't think he's made it, Bill, but he's going to be close. And keep in mind, this is his first attempt.
That's right. He has to be disappointed. It's kind of dank, dark, and dreary down that side of the stadium with no wind or sun whatsoever. He's got good speed in the runway with a good high knee lift. Don't forget, he has to compromise that speed with upward lift on contact. When the foot hits the board, it'll slow down the lower part of his body and speed up the upper part. Then he's got to do this hitch kick to prevent himself from taking a nosedive, throw the arms back, and extend into the pit. His arms are still forward. I still say if he would get his arms back, he would be far better off.
Well, we're about halfway through the first round of 33 jumpers trying to qualify for the final. In the long jump, Jim McAndrew came up with 7:45. He's a little bit short. Buchanan had 5:61. He walked through it, and Richard Rock at 7:44. Lloyd?
Okay, Tom. Alan Warren and David Hunt of Britain finished 14th.
Earlier this morning, you saw some of the long jump live, and now, because we had to tape during our break, we're going to show you the rest of the long jump. Here's Tom McKee.
We're now down to the final jumps for the three Canadians in the long jump qualification. They must hit at least a distance of 7.69, and to assure themselves a place, they have to go 780 at 7.80 meters. Jim Buchanan, the Canadian record holder, at 25 feet 11.5 inches. Richard Rock is left in. Jim McAndrew is left in. They have one more jump each, and this is Buchanan. He has done 5:61, where he had real trouble on his first jump. He walked through, then 7:49, the best of the Canadians. Here's his final attempt. No.
Oh, Lord love us. My gosh, that's Jim Buchanan taking a roll. Oh, it looks like he might have even injured himself on the takeoff there. Oh, what a shame for such a fine Canadian athlete. Oh, gosh. Poor Jim Buchanan. Last year he had strained knee ligaments, you know, and that injury may be reappearing at this point.
So we'll have to take a closer look at this, Bill, and just try to figure out what went wrong and where it went wrong and why it went wrong.
Oh, I feel so bad for him. He had good speed built up on the runway. Good speed indeed. All he had to do was convert it, and there may have been a erratic knee action on the board, which might have re-injured that knee again. He looks like he's in pain to me.
Here it is from two angles. Let's take a close look at it.
He's determined looking, to say the least. And he's got good speed on the runway with a good high knee action, good thrust. Here he is leaning back to take off.
No,
Look
he
at
slipped.
Look at the right foot. The heel is slipping into the plasticine. He slipped in the plasticine, tore the plasticine away from the runway, and fell on his side into the pit. What a shame. He overstepped and fouled and slipped on the plasticine and re-injured his bad knee.
So for those folks who don't know why the plasticine is here, that is how they measure fault on the board. Let's take another look at it. Watch his right foot. See, he's over, and it slips to the right. It opened up on him.
That's right. The right heel went over to the right, causing the course, the upper body to go to the left, action and reaction. Poor Jim took a real tumble in the pit there, and then it's all over for him.
We have 2 more jumps to try and get into this long jump final. One of them by Richard Rock, who is at the run-up, the runway right now. The other coming up by Jim McAndrew. But first, let us look at Richard Rock. He's done 7:44, 7:24. For all intents and purposes, he'll have to do 7:80. I don't think he did.
No, he's way back. He's way back. Another big disappointment for Canadian field event, men's field events. 19-year-old Rock at 6'1", 148 pounds. He's light and he's fast. He was 4th ranked in the country last year. This year he surprised everybody by winning our first Olympic trials. However, here he has not succeeded in making that qualifying round. He's got a good hard run here. He's very determined. He's got a good lean back, but not enough height, not enough conversion of that forward speed into upward height. He felt it almost when he was in the air. His extension was poor. He had almost a depressing looking landing in the pit. Important in the long jump to build up that speed. It's so important to be fast in the long jump.
Bill, that was the best distance that he had, 7:57. But just not enough, not enough.
That's right, and I'm afraid those forward-reaching arms, which never did get back behind him, lowered his legs too soon and cut off that jump.
Here's our last hope to reach the final of the long jump, Jim McAndrew. If consistency were to count, then he would be in because he's had 2 jumps of 7.45 meters. But consistency isn't the qualifying mark. The qualifying mark is 7.80 meters, and well below that. Rock and Buchanan have already gone by the wayside. That even puts more pressure on McAndrew. He's rocking. He takes about an average run up to the board.
One of the problems here, Tom, he's got to go from sunlight into the dark. It's got to be an eyesight problem here.
It's going to be very close, but I don't think he has reached that qualifying mark of 7.80. And because we have only 9 that have qualified at this point, there'll be a count back, but he'll have to get up very close to 7.80 anyway.
He's developing a lot of power on the runway. Very serious part of this of any jump, getting this speed. A little bit of a check there, getting his lean back, and a plant, bit of a check plant. Arms still held far too far forward on the landing, causing his feet to drop down prematurely into the pit and cutting off what I'm sure might have been a good 8 or 9 inches or more on that jump.
As we've said, he has had 2 jumps of 7.45. I doubt very much if he got over that by very much. We'll have to wait and see for the official scorer's decision.
It's a real shame. Jim McAndrew, U.S. Junior Outdoor Champion, this year has a best of 25 feet, 11 and a half inches. That's 791.
Just 3 centimeters better than his other 2 jumps, as Jim McAndrew does not qualify. And so the Canadians are wiped out of any possibility of even getting near a medal because they do not get in the final of the long jump.
The games of the 21st Olympiad, brought to you by these sponsors, will return after state.
Commonwealth Games from Edmonton, Alberta are brought to you by your local bottler of Coca-Cola. Coke adds life to a commonwealth of friends. and Zenith. System 3, the best Zenith ever.
Back now to field. It's the other events there, and Tom McKee is there.
On the infield right now, we are watching Group 1, the men's individual long jump qualifying. We have had only 2 in this first of 3 jumps who have made the qualifying standard of 7.50 meters. They were Babu Suresh of India at 7.59 and Bill Kirkpatrick of Northern Ireland at 7.66. And we are watching now Chris Commons of Australia. He shouldn't have any difficulty whatsoever with this qualifying distance of 7.50. He had a best in 1977, in fact, set an Australian record at 8.08.
That's 26 feet, 6 1/4 inches, a pretty good distance last year, and he's going to be happy if he can do the same this year.
He certainly went through some frustrations a couple of years ago in Montreal for the Olympics because he was injured at the time and could not compete in those. Chris Commons of Australia on the runway and ready to jump. This is the first.
His brother David, by the way, was the Australian triple jump champion some time ago.
Ready? He's set. And he goes. Good speed. Off the board, we're going to get a red flag or a white flag. It looks like it's white, so it is. And we will have a measurement for Chris Commons of Australia.
Looks like a pretty fair jump. He seems confident, shook his head there, feeling he's already qualified. Pretty good straight line form down the runway here. Good high knee action, slight lean back as he takes off, which is correct. Good high knee on the takeoff leg, and then his hitch kick rotation forward and back with the arms upon the landing to assure himself a nice stable position in the pit.
And a nice stable measurement too of 7.81. That is the best that we have seen in round number 1. Chris Commons of Australia, 7.81 on his first try. Let's go back to the end of the runway now, and Canadian Jim McAndrew, who has done 7.56 this year.
Pretty good jumper, Tom. One of our big hopes, I think, in this competition. He's been pretty consistent over the years. In 1975, he was the U.S. Junior Indoor Champion. He's 5'9½", 155 pounds, from Toronto. Has a best ever of 25 feet, 11.5 inches, which is just a hair under that magical 26-foot mark. It's 7.91 meters. That performance in this competition would about guarantee him a medal, I'd say. And with a win behind him, as he has here today, he should qualify with no problems.
He has American college training from Texas Technical College. Here he goes, Jim McAndrew of Toronto. He's got a good distance out there. And
it's a nice jump, and he knows it.
The white flag comes up. So McAndrew should be happy with his first try.
Coached by Walter Kostrick and James Segrest. Here he comes down the runway. Good, powerful, high arm action, high knees. Good take off the board, leans back and rotates forward. Again, I think the man should be throwing his arms back just before he hits the pit. Everything in this sport is equal and opposite reaction.
7.53. So he certainly has made that qualifying standard. Jim McAndrew of Canada.
Let's go back to the decathlon with Tom McKee and the long jump.
6 of the athletes in the men's long jump remain to qualify at a distance of 7.50 meters. They include Emmanuel Metheti of Ghana, Ronald Chambers of Jamaica, Steve Hanna of the Bahamas, Bermuda's Dennis Trott, Kenneth Loraway of Australia, and surprisingly enough, Richard Rock, this man on the runway now from Canada, who had a jump of 7.40 meters in his first try. He has 3 to qualify for the final.
This man is really under pressure now. He's had a jump this spring, a windy 26.8, which is unbelievable. And here he's got the wind. He's got to qualify.
And I think he has the distance. He should have the distance with that one, no?
It may be in doubt. It's hard to tell from here, but 750 shouldn't be hard for Richard Rock. Look at him coming down the runway. Nice, aggressive, good lift off the board. He's got the height. Good arms back on the landing.
He has made it, Bill. 752, we understand.
Oh, by a squeak. That's barely over a quarter of an inch.
752 it is. That's confirmed now. And so Richard Rock will join the other Canadian from Group one of these qualifiers, Jim McAndrews, and go on to the final of the men's individual long jump. In Group 2, which we will also be watching closely today, we have one Canadian, and that is Barry Boyd. We'll be watching him as well. So Jim McAndrews and Richard Rock both qualify for the final of the men's high jump with jumps of 753 and 752 respectively.
All right, Tom. As we were reviewing, him and as Don and Tom pointed out, there's quite a crowd there now, and this is the men's long jump. Here's Tom McKee.
Well, let's go over to the long jump pit and find out what's going on over there in their first jumps. We've had William Kirkpatrick of Northern Ireland, who certainly is their national record holder, foul out. Jim McAndrew of Toronto jumped a moment ago, ranked number 10 in the Commonwealth, and came up with a good distance of 7.47. Not the best of this first round yet. That was by Dennis Trott of Bermuda at 771. You are now watching Chris Commons of Australia. He has a personal best in this event of 808, holds the Aussie record, won the 1978 trials with a jump of 7.69. Our first appearance in the Commonwealth Games, round 1, men's long jump final for Chris Commons. See how he psychs himself up and rocks and goes. Good speed, some wind helping him. Pretty good distance there.
Interesting style, Tom. He seems to run very well on the runway. He gets his speed up. As we all know, the long jump is a question of a compromise once again between height and speed. He seems to have lots of speed and then sort of tiptoes through the air once he leaves the board. He's been a competent competitor for quite some years now. We see the good lift here. Must have that high knee, even higher if possible. His head down as he heads toward the pit and throws his arms back for a good lower leg extension.
779 is his distance, so that will be the best of this first round to this point. 779 for Chris Commons. Here's one of our big Canadian hopes, Bill, Richard Rock. Let's see if he can get that speed and the height and the distance together. Looks pretty good. He's certainly capable of it. If he, as I say, gets it all together on one particular jump.
Well, I sure hope he warms up well today, Tom, because he's got a terrific wind behind him, and he should be taking advantage of that. This man's improved well over 3 feet in the last 3 years, and if he keeps that going, he's going to go out of the stadium by 1990. Good height here, nice arch of the back, and pretty good landing in the pit, although he seemed rather high to me when his heels did touch down.
Ranked number 5th in the Commonwealth, 785, and he takes at least a temporary lead in this first round.
Well, that's
Richard Rock.
That's 25 feet, 9 inches.
The long jump, like the high jump and the pole vault, are events that seem to drag out at times. Right now, though, we're going back out there, and this time for the women's javelin. Going on out there in long jump, and it's just going to be a very busy evening. I think you're going to enjoy it out at the Commonwealth Stadium.
Richard Rock remains in the lead in the long jump, just at the tail end of the first round of the 11 competitors that are taking part. But Roy Mitchell of England certainly has the capability of pushing Richard Rock. He is on the runway now, getting ready for his first jump. He is the final competitor of round number 1. Richard Rock leading at 785. Then we go to Dennis Trott of Bermuda at Chris Commons is in second place at 779, and then Trott of Bermuda 771. Roy Mitchell of England. Well, he certainly, I don't think he's going to pass Richard Rock with that jump, but he's going to let them know that he's... Oh, he got the red flag, so obviously must have gone over the board, and so he takes a fault. So at the end, then, of the first round, the long jump final, it's Richard Rock. Second place, Chris Commons of Australia. Third, Dennis Trott of Bermuda. Jim McAndrew of Toronto had a jump of 747.
All right, Tom, going back to the lawn bowls now, which is at quickly now, let's get back to the Commonwealth Stadium and the men's long jump.
Here's Jim McAndrew of Toronto, 756, his best of 1978. He had a first round jump of 747, ranked number 10 in the Commonwealth, attends college in the United States at Texas Tech.
Cannot overlook the importance of getting a good jump very early in this competition, Tom, because if long jumpers get a good one away in the first round or second round or so, that tends to very much demoralize the opposition. And I think most long jumpers have this in mind in this very early part of the competition. Now, McAndrew has had a windy 25.11½, just a half inch under that magical 26-foot mark. Let's see what he does with this wind behind him now.
Yeah, good speed. Off the board, he did not get, let's see, is he going to get the white flag or the red flag? They take a look at it very closely, and he will have a measurement.
He's a terrific athlete, and I think is improving little by little every year. Texas Tech back in Canada for our Commonwealth Games. Here about to take off to get that lift off the board. Look at him looking up at the sky, arching back and throwing his arms forward. Unfortunately, again, leaving them forward. I think he ought to whip them back so that he can get that good lower leg extension.
748, so he's just 1 centimeter better than his first jump. They looked very closely at the board to see if he had fouled there. They don't have an awful lot to play with when they're going at that speed down the runway. It's only 4 feet wide, 8 inches deep.
And, in fact, as you point out, he has to adjust for the wind behind him. In other words, move his approach mark back so that he doesn't overrun the board. That was not a very good jump for Jim, about 24 feet, 6.5 inches. Quite a mediocre distance in this day and age, and he's going to have to do an awful lot better if he wants to break into the top ranks here.
When we arrived at the stadium for this competition, the conditions were almost ideal. In fact, they might have been a little bit too hot down on the track. But since then, a wind has picked up, and in this type of stadium with 2 open ends, it has a tendency to swirl quite a bit. You are watching Chris Commons of Australia, who jumped 779. That was good for second place in the first round behind Richard Rock.
Talk about a wind, Tom. This man's had a windy 808 this year, which is about 26 feet, 6.25 inches. And if he can do that here, and there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to, there's a lot of other jumpers going to be in big trouble.
Chris Commons of Australia, silver medalist at the 1974 Commonwealth Games in Christchurch. See how he psychs himself?
Yes, he sure does. He jumped 26 feet in the Commonwealth Games you referred to, Tom, in Christchurch.
Speed. He got a good jump there. There's no doubt about that, and he knows it as soon as he came out of the sand.
I'm amazed, too, because really on his run-up approach to the board, he looked like he wasn't going to get a good one away. He was kind of, what do you call it, chicken stepping in athletics, tiptoeing, it seemed. In other words, the wind was blowing him too close to the board, and he had to cut down his stride in order to get it a good jump. Here we see him cutting down a bit, but nevertheless getting quite a strong plant, arching back with the arms, forward with the legs in what is called a hitch kick maneuver for a pretty good landing in the pit.
We should have his distance in 1 second as they go to the electronic scoreboard on the far side of the infield. 3 events right now, 3 field events taking place at the same. Hey, that's
there
great.
You go.
8:04 as Chris Commons of Australia jumps past Richard Rock into the lead after, well, not after, but in the second round.
Well, there we go, Tom. There's the wind behind him. There's the Christchurch medalist, and there's 26 feet, 4.5 inches. That's a pretty impressive jump with or without a wind.
Richard Rock just taking off his warm-up clothing now. Richard, in the 1978 U.S. Tri-Meet in Illinois, had a jump of 8.13. So it looks as if he and Commons could have quite a battle between the two of them.
Well, they sure could, and I think it's every long jumper's prayer that that kind of, what should I call it, perfect jump will happen in the biggest competition of the year, which this has to be for Canada's own Richard Rock. That 8.13 you mentioned was a 26-foot, 8-inch jump. He would have beaten Daley Thomas's jump if he had that. So he's got to be psyched because the long jump is one of those events, and Bob Beeman's great effort at Mexico is a witness to this, that requires such precision and such a fine compromise between speed and height. If you can get that and put it all together, you can add a foot in any one jump if you're lucky.
Richard Rock And he will be somewhat behind Chris Commons' second jump of 8:04.
Well, he had a pretty smooth run-up to the board, but it wasn't what I might call aggressive. It wasn't an aggressive approach. And I think Richard knows very well he's going to have to get very determined if he wants to bypass Commons. He is running well here with the traditional good high knee lift and a nice takeoff, but I think he was well behind the board, probably lost about 5 inches. Uses his arms well before he lands in the pit, but came down too soon and let his legs drop, and thus losing some of that valuable momentum.
Well, the measurement has been made, and he does fall behind. He fell behind his first effort. He's down at 7:23 for that jump. He had a first jump of 7:85, and that's it for now from the second round of the men's long jump final.
All right, Tom. During the course of our telecasts from here in Edmonton, the CBC
Canadian Championships at 7:63, 1978 U.S. Tri-Meet, Illinois. As we said earlier, he did a distance of 8:13, ranked number 5 in the Commonwealth.
That's 26 feet 8. If he did that here, he'd win this competition.
Here he goes, his final attempt, and it wasn't a bad one. It's not going to be up around Roy Mitchell's mark of 8:06, however, but it might sneak him into a bronze.
It might do, and we'd be very happy about that indeed. He's a young athlete after all. Born in 1957, one of the biggest competitions for him ever. Nice to see the crowd so well behind this Canadian athlete.
Yeah, Richards lives in Toronto now, born actually in Reading, England. Well, that distance for Richard wasn't quite as good as we thought it might have been. Only 7:63. He'll have to settle for nothing better than 5th. Babu Suresh of India making his final jump, flying it out quite well. He might be over the 8-meter mark. No, he doesn't look as if he's that happy with it.
Not a bad jump. He's a very light man, pretty fast on the runway, but that was a foul jump, Tom. That doesn't count.
So there won't be any measurement of all anyway. So the best that Babu Suresh comes up with was his 4th jump of the day, and that was 7:94, but that will give him a bronze medal at this point. Here's the gold medalist. You can't lose it now. Roy Mitchell of England with a jump on his 3rd try of 8:06.
Terrific athlete, 23 years old, 6'4", 190 pounds. He's had a best in his life previously of 8:04 legal. That's 26.4 and a half. Second only to the great Lynn Davies in the UK, by the way. Was 15th at Montreal and ranked number 8 in the world last year by Track and Field News.
So Roy Mitchell just running out the clock, as they say in the vernacular here. His 6th and final jump. He might go after a mark. No, he's content, just didn't feel just right to him, so he just walked through the pit. So Roy Mitchell with a jump of 8:06 on that finishing on a foul, but finishing also with a gold medal. Chris Commons of Australia is good for the silver medal, and Babu Suresh of India takes the bronze. Here's a final look at this great athlete, Roy Mitchell.
He's a very good athlete, Thomas. Too bad he walked through this one. Just didn't have the height and couldn't hold it. We're going to see this man one day in the decathlon. He's gone over 7,000 points and has a 10,600 meters. A great athlete indeed.
So it's Roy Mitchell, Chris Commons, Babu Suresh, England, Australia, India, gold, silver, bronze.
All right, Tom, and Roy Mitchell, along with Daley Thompson, are two of the fine young
I've done a lot of over-distance running, like 500s and stuff, so I'm really strong.
The men's 100-meter final could be a most interesting race involving the runners in lanes 1 and 2, Richard Rock and Desai Williams, and Marv Nash running in lane number 8. Doug Treiner, Randy Seeley, Lyndon Fogg, Ben Johnson, and Sterling Hines, the other competitors. Desai Williams has moved into the lead and is in complete control and hits the finish line in front, looking over to the outside lanes, particularly at Ben Johnson and Marvin Nash, and I think Ben Johnson may have edged Marvin Nash for the number 2 position, but there's no doubt that Desai Williams was an easy winner of this 100-meter final.
Getting a good start in lane 2 with Richard Rock, the long jumper, in lane 1, pulling up after the first 30 meters, doubtless with a muscle pull, as Desai Williams shows why he is the number 1 Canadian sprinter by literally strolling away with this race. And in fact, Ben Johnson seemingly taking second place from Marv Nash. Here's an isolated view in lane 2 of Canada's number 100-meter male sprinter, showing the tremendous power from the arms, the range of movement in the